The cafeteria of Orion Academy for Interstellar Youth was loud with clattering trays, bursts of laughter, and the hum of dozens of different languages. A faint aroma of metallic steam mixed with something like roasted kelp filled the air. Students of every imaginable origin, from human to insectoid to crystalline, sat in clusters under glowing orbs that mimicked a soft Earth-like daylight. At the farthest corner, on the polished metal floor beneath one of the glowing orbs, sat Sarah, the alien girl. She was tall for her age, with skin the color of muted lilac and eyes that shimmered in hues of deep sapphire. Her hair, or what passed for it, was a living crown of faintly glowing tendrils, curling like water plants in a current. She should have been beautiful in her own way, but beauty was not the lens through which her classmates saw her. They saw otherness, they saw difference, and some unfortunately saw prey. "Look at her," sneered Jax Talvin, a broad-shouldered human boy with an ever-present smirk. He dropped his tray loudly onto the table and pointed down at Sarah. His friends, a mix of human and Martian students, leaned in to watch the spectacle. "Too good for our food, huh? What do your people eat, Sarah rocks?" "Dirt." Sarah didn't answer. She sat cross-legged on the floor, picking at the small portion of nutrient paste that had spilled from her tray after Jax had deliberately shoved it off the table earlier. Her species, the Lirani, were known across the galaxy as pacifists. They believed in dignity through endurance, and Sarah had been raised with the idea that to fight back was to betray her people's values. "She's eating off the floor again," giggled one of Jax's cronies. "Maybe that's a royal tradition for the Lirani," another added cruelly. The laughter echoed. Sarah lowered her gaze and tried to focus on the paste. Her throat was tight, but she refused to cry. She had cried enough in her first months at Orion Academy. It hadn't helped then. At a table near the center of the cafeteria, another human sat alone. Elias Kale, 17, had transferred to the academy only 3 weeks earlier. His father was a cargo pilot stationed near Jupiter, and his mother an engineer working with the Interstellar Bridge project. Elias was still learning how to blend in. He wasn't outgoing. He didn't know the unspoken social hierarchies yet, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to. But he noticed Sarah. Everyone did. And unlike the others, he didn't look away. The beginning of defiance. That day, when Jax and his group burst into another round of laughter at Sarah's expense, Elias felt something twist inside him. He had seen bullying before, on Earth in smaller schools, but something about this was worse. Maybe it was because Sarah looked so alien, so vulnerable, and yet so determined not to fight back. He pushed his tray aside and stood. The clatter made a few heads turn. Jax arched an eyebrow. "What are you doing, new kid?" Jax's voice carried an amused edge. "You want to join her?" Floors wide open. Elias walked over and crouched beside Sarah. He picked up what was left of her nutrient paste and placed it gently back onto the tray. "You don't have to eat like this," he said softly, so only she could hear. Then louder, addressing Jax. "Why don't you leave her alone?" The cafeteria grew quieter. Bullying Sarah was entertainment, but this was different. Challenge. Jax stood, his height giving him the confidence he always wore like armor. "Listen, newbie. You don't know how things work here. She doesn't belong. None of her kind do. We're just reminding her of her place." "And who made you king of the academy?" Elias shot back. His heart hammered, but he didn't let it show. "You think knocking someone's tray down makes you strong?" A murmur rippled through the cafeteria. No one had spoken to Jax like that in years. Jax smirked, though his eyes narrowed. "You've got guts. Stupid guts. But guts." Sarah looked at Elias with wide, astonished eyes. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to say something, but no words came. An uneasy alliance. After that day, Elias sat with Sarah at lunch. At first, she barely spoke, communicating mostly in short nods or soft syllables of her native tongue. But gradually, her walls began to crack. "You shouldn't have interfered," she whispered one afternoon as they walked to class. "It will only make you a target." "Better me than you," Elias replied. Sarah frowned. "You don't understand. For the Lirani, to endure is honorable. But if someone defends me, it means I failed to endure. It means weakness." Elias stopped in his tracks. "So you'd rather be humiliated?" "No," she said, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim hall light. "But I would rather be true to my people." Elias didn't fully understand, but he nodded. Over the next weeks he learned more. Sarah's homeworld, Lyranus Prime, had been scarred by centuries of war before her ancestors embraced peace as the highest calling. Their children were taught restraint, patience, and resilience. But Elias also saw how the bullying wore Sarah down. Her glow dimmed. Her movements slowed. And in class, when the instructors asked her questions, she answered less often, as if shrinking into invisibility. Jax, meanwhile, escalated. He tripped Elias in corridors, hurled insults, and once even smeared nutrient paste across Sarah's textbooks. Each time, Elias stood firm, sometimes retaliating with sharp words, sometimes simply standing between Sarah and her tormentors. The other students began to notice. Some whispered support for Elias. Others avoided him, afraid of Jax's retaliation. But the dynamic was shifting. The catalyst, the breaking point came during the zero-G combat simulation. It was a standard academy exercise. Students donned magnetic boots, floated in a controlled arena, and practiced mock combat for strategy lessons. Jax, of course, made sure Sarah was on his opposing team. Midway through the simulation, he slammed into her with deliberate force, knocking her against a wall. Her magnetic boots detached, and she spun helplessly in the air. Laughter erupted across the arena. Elias's vision went red. He launched himself across the chamber, catching Sarah before she drifted too far. "You okay?" he whispered. She nodded weakly, clutching her side. "Enough!" Elias roared across the arena. His voice echoed through the comm system. "You think hurting someone weaker makes you strong? Try someone who can fight back." The instructors tried to intervene, but Jax grinned. "Finally, I was hoping you'd say that." What followed wasn't a sanctioned match. It was chaos. Elias fought with raw determination, blocking Jax's blows, using momentum against him, even slamming him into the arena wall once. For every hit Elias took, he delivered one back. By the time the instructors separated them, both boys were bruised, helmets cracked, and breathing hard. Jax spat blood and glared. "This isn't over, Kale." But in that moment, Elias noticed something more important. Sarah, floating just behind him, her sapphire eyes shining with something he hadn't seen before, hope. A world beyond bullying. News of the fight spread fast. Some students mocked Elias for defending the alien. Others, however, admired his courage. Sarah began to walk the corridors without hugging the walls. She even answered questions in class again, her voice clear and confident. One evening, as they studied in the academy library, Sarah finally spoke about the burden she carried.